If you would, please. All right. Good afternoon, all. This is Committee on Administration for the County of Dunn. My name is Vaughn Headland. I'm the chair of the committee. We are meeting in room 54 at the county building here in Menominee. Call of the roll. Right now, all supervisors are here except for Mr. Zahn, who is joining us via Zoom until he can walk in the door. And so all the committee is present along with staff who are here also. Approval of the meeting minutes. Our last meeting was the 25th of May. Mr. Bauer moves, second by Mr. Lenow. Any questions or comments on the minutes? The only thing was in the minutes, we did reflect our meeting was scheduled for the 22nd, but as you see, we ended up postponing it. A couple of us, including myself, we're not going to be here. So thank you to Chris and staff for getting us rescheduled. Public comment. Do we have any public comment? All right. Thank you. Staff reports. Our first staff report comes from our administration, and that would be our county manager, Chris Corpala.
So you have my written report, and then I included with you a staff report that I provided to the committee on to the executive committee last week as well. It's not a request, doesn't need to have any action taken. It's just laying the background to a request that will be included in the 2024 budget for potentially adding an assistant county manager position. Subsequent to the executive committee meeting, we did some more kind of thinking about how this might be coordinated and potentially have a different structure for thinking about it, asking for looking at our existing department heads and seeing if there's capacity within interest and capacity within one of the positions. Can we move some things around and then add some assistant responsibilities to a department head? So we're exploring some of that, but more than the actual request, I just wanted to give you the background of sort of what the basis is for that. So if you have any questions about that, I'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, it's just for your information.
Any questions for Chris? Mr. Bauer.
On your staff report, you got things that are looking in the future, consideration for the future. You had a little list here, items 2 and 3, bullet 2 and 3. What are you trying to do for housing study, and what is, I guess I'm not even sure what Qualtrics is.
So the housing study, okay, so the Planning Resources and Development Committee established a housing work group, which is something that a committee can do out of a committee. So they've established a housing work group, and they met this morning, but 2 weeks ago when they met, they selected the representation of who would be on that work group. And Ann Wodarczyk from zoning, and I will bring that group together to begin to look at the housing study and the recommendations and see what are the priorities and what might be able to be accomplished with that. So that's the housing study work group. And then the Qualtrics is actually a tool. We were able to hop on board with the city of Menominee. The city police department received a large federal grant, and they purchased it's a surveying tool called Qualtrics, and it allows us to do some public surveying, staff surveying in an easy manner, and a kind of create an easier ability to analyze the results. So currently, Dan Dunbar is kind of our lead on that project, and then we're looking at adding an additional license to that. so that we have a couple of people that can implement that, put those out. If there's something the county board wanted to know and we could link it in a social media site or whatever and do some polling of the public, polling of staff, things like that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question, if I may.
Okay.
Chris, you said that you met with 4 different insurance people. I'm just kind of wondering what that was pertaining to exactly.
So I might invite Jenna to speak to that actually, because she's going to speak to it better than I am. Sure.
Or you'll be sick of hearing from me by the end of the day.
Okay.
I'm just gonna bring this up now. Save time.
Why don't you just join us, Jenna, at the table, if that's okay?
Okay, so I'll just speak to the 4 meetings that Chris was referencing. That's relating to our request for proposal process that we had started to select a benefits consultant. So up until this point, we have been working with M3 Insurance as our consultant. Sorry, due to we just wanted to go out for bid and review what's out there, make sure that we're getting the best value. And we did make a decision to move forward with a new consultant as of July 1, and that is the Insurance Center. So Chris had joined in 4 meetings, and those 4 were our top proposers for that process. We had a total of 11. So we had 11 binders to go through. It was a good competitive process, and I'm excited to move forward with the Insurance Center.
And can you talk for just a moment, Jenna, about what does that broker do for us?
Sure. So they consult us in all areas of benefits, but of course, with health insurance being the most costly and expensive, they assist in putting all of those pieces together as far as our third-party administrator, our network. They negotiate renewals and provide actuarial data and recommendations for each year as far as how we can keep our plan afloat. And I'll have some more detailed information on how that's been going.
Just a quick question. If we're changing from M3 or 3M or whatever it is to somebody new, is that going to have any impact on these programs where we're saving a bunch of money, right, with the drugs?
It will not. So they're our consultant, but we don't have to make any changes to our actual vendors and who we're working with. With that being said, we have had some challenges with our third-party administrator, Prairie States. We started working with them in 2022. So one of the first things that we will be looking at with our new consultant is evaluating if it would be good to change third-party administrators. The third-party administrator is the vendor that processes all of our claims. So we don't actually receive health insurance claims in our office. They do it for us, that kind of a thing. So they're a really important piece of the employee experience and how they navigate benefits. So we want to make sure that we are in the right hands as far as that goes. So there may be some changes. We don't anticipate changing near site clinic, Aletheus, or anything like that. If at some point it makes sense to do so, we would look at it and chat with you all about that, but that's not the plan at this point.
Okay, so essentially your primary motivation is the expense of the health insurance in itself. Mm-hmm. What about the other stuff that goes along with that benefit package, the life insurance, the disability insurance? And can they do anything for workman's comp?
So they won't assist us so much with workers' comp. We do work with a different agency for that. But as far as the other, they call them ancillary benefits. They will review what we need them to review. So right now we have the Wisconsin retirement system, obviously, that we participate in. With that, life insurance, we work with the employee trust funds group. So that isn't necessarily anything that we would be looking to change. But they can definitely help us with employee education and open enrollment and things like that. And then we have voluntary accident and illness insurance, which they could also help review for us. That's currently through the standard. So the full package really, but usually the focus is on health insurance just because that carries the most weight.
Okay. So when you looked at all these 11 different proposals, was there anything that was really eye-opening for you? Anything that said,
well, how much time do we have? So in this process, I've learned a lot, I would say, in a really short amount of time. I really wanted to make sure that we were going into selecting a consultant that was going to be a true partner with us and truly aligned with where we want to be heading. I've learned that health insurance brokers don't always work for the employer, even though the employer might think they are. So something that I've learned is most importantly, trust, transparency, also having a really good understanding of fees, where every dollar is going. Our new partner has guaranteed that they don't receive any under the table compensation from other vendors. And that's important to us because then we know that they're truly working for us and not necessarily others, under the table that aren't as obvious. So I could plan probably a whole meeting to talk more about that, but definitely have learned a lot, and it has been eye-opening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the education process is always eye-opening somewhere along the line. Yeah. I just wondered, it's good that we're looking, and at the same time, does this give our current provider an opportunity to sharpen their pencil, so to speak, on a quote? Yep. We don't want to go there.
I think that it does. As far as our decision to move on to a different consultant, is that what you're asking?
Well, I'm just kind of wondering, if we have these competitive bids,
Mm-hmm.
if we come back to them and say, here's where we feel shortfalls is
mm-hmm.
happening at this particular time, could you give us any insight in that regard to maybe, again, give us the right quote?
Certainly, they did come forward with a pretty competitive proposal, but just given our evolving needs and the approach that we want to be taking, being proactive and making sure that we keep the momentum going with our new things that we've implemented, we felt that changing consultants was the best route for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Ugg.
So I think Tim asked most of what I was looking at. The fact that we have these agreements with these other medical means to save money. I just wanted to emphasize the importance of what you're doing to make sure that's a front of mind issue, and it sounds like you are, so thanks.
Yeah. I kind of like the analogy, like a health insurance package and a plan is like having 10 Ferraris, and if you're not the one driving them, then it could really be a problem.
Anyone else? All right, thank you much.
I have one other, and Jenna can just hang out because then she's gonna actually talk some more about these things when she gets to her report. But I just have one other quick update. So you'll recall that we also switched auditors this year, and we are with an organization called Kerber Rose. It's our first year through an audit with them and them with us. And they also are aware that we will need to do at least an upgrade, if not a replacement of our finance system, our current SAP. So they are kind of going through things with a fine tooth comb to clean up sort of anything that might need cleanup in anticipation of that. So things are going a little bit slower. They may be ready to do their report to you in July. But I told them this morning in an email that really it was understandable. It was a transition year for all of us. And so they may not be able to do a report until August. And then it wouldn't go to county board until September because there's no August county board meeting. But I just wanted we're shooting for the end of July, but it may be the August meeting.
Anything else? Anything else, Chris, you want to add? All right, good. We're going to move on to human resources. and you have more for us.
I do, and I'm sharing my screen. I'll wait for that to pop up. I want to make sure that works. Okay, I didn't know that animation was built in there. So sorry about that. This is just my title slide. I wanted to kind of provide this as a general update from Human Resources. I don't know that of course I provide a monthly report, but I don't know that we've really gone too far in depth as far as our team, and excited to share some current data with you. So we'll just start. I have a list for the day. Hopefully by providing an outline of our HR structure, and as well as our functions in human resources, our main responsibilities. Also want to chat about some current challenges and future challenges that we will be facing, and some successes that would be spelled correctly normally, and then some opportunities and ideas for the future. Okay, so here we have a somewhat crowded view of our HR structure. I'm the Human Resources Director. I'm up in the top left corner there. And what I wanted to provide was a summary of like 6 to 8 main job functions that each of us are responsible for. I won't go through them in depth. However, just want to provide you an idea of who we have on our team and what we do every day. So I'm responsible for HR policy and strategy. That's a lot of what I chat with this committee about, what we chat about at the board level. Compensation and benefits plan administration, management of our HR team, of course, employee relations. So that does include personnel issues and any investigations that need to take place, budget administration, and leadership strategy. And I won't cover them all again. So then we have Rachel Bach, who is our HR manager. She's over here. She reports directly to me. She is primarily responsible for a lot of her time is taken actually by overseeing the payroll process. So within the last year, the Human Resources Division took over the management of payroll. So that takes up a lot of her time. She's also responsible for HR compliance issues, oversees the recruitment process, and also leave administration. She's responsible for unemployment and performance management. So within Rachel's management are the HR advisors. So we have Sarah Stansberry, and I apologize, the names got a little funky. And Caitlin Esslinger. So they have both been on our team. Caitlin started April of 2022, so just over a year. Sarah started with us in September of 2022. So both fairly new to the team. They both are primarily responsible for recruitment, onboarding, leave administration, any sort of accommodations, processes, and of course, direct manager support. So how they have it structured is that they are each assigned to certain departments in the county, and they kind of have it split as evenly as they can. Sarah's largest department that she supports is Human Services and Public Health. And Caitlin is primarily supportive of the Sheriff's Office and the Highway and Transit and Judicial Center departments. And then, of course, we have our payroll specialist. Her name is Lisa. She processes payroll biweekly, of course. Also responsible for W-2 reporting, employee data maintenance of SAP, other required reporting, wage verifications, and then also ACA and WRS tracking. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we have Patty, who is our safety and benefits coordinator. She's the main person that administers the benefits package here at the county. With that, she's also responsible for risk management and liability, records retention, ACA compliance, workers' compensation. She also is responsible for compliance for the WRS system or the Wisconsin Retirement System. And along with all the benefits administration comes a pretty hefty workload of vendor management and payables. So she pays a lot of invoices. Any questions about our team? Just wasn't sure if you had an idea of how it's structured and wanted to kind of give you a little picture of that. Okay, so the fun part, right? Maybe the not so fun part. So we wanted to put together some data to provide to you as kind of an outline of how much recruitment and turnover has changed in the last 5 years. So Sarah Stansberry, one of our HR advisors, along with Rachel, had worked a lot of hours on putting together some data for us. And what we know from looking at the last 5 years is that there have been a total of 401 new hires. So in a 5-year span, the number of new hires has actually increased by 52%. So that's 52% more hiring taking place in the last 5 years than had been before. And along with that came 98 transfers and promotions in the last 5 years. So of course, with hiring comes separations, right? Or the separation comes first. So we know that a total of 780 separations have taken place since 2018. And that's actually 1.6 times our total number of staff. So you can say that our staff has turned over 1.5 times in the last 5 years. Obviously not every position, but and the 5-year average turnover rate is at 32%. And the most common turnover rate, maybe not so much recently, is 10 to 20%. That's kind of where you want to target for an organization. So it has been quite high in the last 5 years. And 17% of those separations were related to retirement. So the remainder of that was simply resignations. Okay, so I also wanted to provide some demographics on our workforce as it is now. We have 523 active employees. And the first pie chart here on the left shows you kind of the age ranges of our current employees. And why this is important is because we can see that actually currently 18% of our workforce could retire tomorrow. They're of age to retire. 12% will reach retirement age within 5 years. So that's combined 30% that either are eligible to retire now or will be in the next 5 years. And then if we jump over to the years of service chart here on the right, this will show just kind of broken down by different brackets here. But we can take away from this that 33% of our workforce has worked here less than 1 year, which would be supportive of the new hire reporting that I had just provided you. I think it's important to show these together because we know that 33% of our workforce has been here less than 1 year. And we also know that 30% more may retire within the next 5 years. Any questions on this?
Seeing that demographic breakdown, does that keep you up at night? Is that a problem?
It is. So I have some ideas for how we can, I mean, I don't want to say it's current, we're in it now, right? But all we can do is think of ways. I think at this point in time, it's very telling of, and this 30% is only retirement related, right? This isn't just people resigning. So this tells us retention becomes our most important tool in maintaining operations. We know that inevitably people will retire and deserve to retire. But if we can keep the resignations at a manageable level, then that's one of the top priorities.
The other question I wanted to ask is, has been any thought about using part-time people, job sharing, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yes. So it has proven to be difficult to find a lot of folks that are able to do part-time. A lot of times the part-time position isn't eligible for health insurance. And usually that's a very large part in someone selecting a job. Obviously there's some folks that don't need the health insurance coverage and are able to work part-time, but that's it can be very difficult to fill part-time positions. But it has been and will continue to be important to cross-train staff so that they're able to keep things moving if there's an unexpected resignation or if you're unable to fill a position. Sure, yeah.
On your previous slide, you had like separations.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the breakdown of that? I'm just kind of curious whether, because you mentioned resignations, but I'm assuming some of those are retirements,
Mm-hmm.
some are people who left for another job, and then there's probably a percentage of those who are people who are let go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of curious how that breaks down.
Yeah, so we know that the 17% are retirements. Unfortunately, our system that we're able to get these reports out of doesn't track specific reasons for resignations. So we don't have those specifics at this point. As far as terminations, I would say it's a very, very small percentage of that. So mostly resignations. Mm-hmm.
I would say this is a really rough number because I don't know it, but I would say since I've been on board, which is almost a year, I want to say there've been a handful of terminations, maybe at the most. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as mentioned, with that data, it really drives home that retention has been and will be very important moving into the next 5 to 10 years. And we know that with that makes well-being and training and development, workplace culture, recognition, and professional development opportunities really important for our employees and building that culture of engagement and keeping them here. Of course, along with that, there's several more like compensation and benefits, but I just wanted to outline some items that if you think about on a day-to-day, things get really busy. These pieces aren't always the top most burning priority. So they often kind of sit on the back burner as far as workloads go. Kind of flipping back to our HR org chart there, it unfortunately it's more of a forward-thinking, strategic type of job duty, but when there's not enough time in the day, it does take the back seat. So I know it's a really abrupt change to health insurance, but I wanted to provide some good news to offset the doom and gloom a little bit. So just going to provide kind of a 5-year review of health insurance, and I'm going to go back to 2017 actually, and just kind of give you a lot of new faces on this committee in the last 5 years. So just kind of give you an idea of how much has changed. So this is just a little snip of the summary of benefits for our most popular plan that we had in 2017, which was very competitive. So our high deductible plan for a single individual, the deductible is $1,500 for the year. For a family, it was $3,000. The county paid $849 per month for the single plans and $2,291 per month for family plans. And the employee paid $0 in premiums for that plan. So it was a very, very, very rich plan. Definitely helpful in recruitment and retention at that point in time. But as you can imagine, it wasn't necessarily sustainable, especially with the rise of healthcare costs. So some changes came in 2018. We had started working with a new third-party administrator, and at the time it was Medica, if you recall. And when we began working with Medica, they had proposed 2 kind of network options within our plans that we offered. And one included a very narrow network. If you recall, that was very specific to Mayo, the Mayo Clinic Health System. So if employees had chose to go with option 1, which was that narrow network, they continued to pay 0 premium. So it was incentivizing them to go to Mayo providers only. And then the option 2 was the wider network, which included most of the large providers in the area. And that's just the breakdown on the premiums. So any guesses on, so what we know about Mayo is that usually they are not the most cost effective, sometimes very necessary and the best choice given the situation, but not always the most cost effective for things like primary care, labs, things like that. So this is a 3-year snapshot of our overall plan spend for 2017 through 2019. So remember in 2018, we had made the changes, provided that narrow network. And at the time, it was explained that that narrow Mayo network would provide deeper savings to the plan. And this is sort of an illustration of what you asked about earlier. and what's eye-opening in selecting a consultant and selecting partners to work with is things like this. So we know that, of course, a lot of factors can be involved in what happened in 2019. But I think it's safe to say that that network structure wasn't working and wasn't containing costs. The yellow is the claims and pharmacy spend. The green is the administrative fixed costs. Any questions? And I know it's kind of blurry, but we were over above $9.5 million in 2019 for overall spend. So of course, with the spend rising, claims rising, we had to make some more changes to the plan structures. So in 2019, the deductibles increased from $1,500 to $2,000 for a single, $3,000 to $4,000 for a family. Still really good plans. We did add an employee premium contribution for at this point it was for both plan options. Increased the premium on the wider network, and then also added that really high deductible plan for the 5,000 individual, 10,000 family. In 2020, we again had to increase deductibles to 3,000 for a single and 6,000 for a family. And all employee premiums increased for all the plan options at that point. And then in 2021, the most impactful increase and change to the plan was the addition of out-of-pocket maximums. So on a single plan, we added an out-of-pocket max of $6,000 for an individual and $12,000 for a family. So $12,000 is what a family could expect to spend if they were needing to seek medical care frequently that year. And that also included a 20% co-insurance that is paid by the employee after they hit their deductible. Any questions on those? I just wanted to provide some history in that to kind of show you how quickly the employee benefits, or at least just the health insurance benefit, had changed. Okay, so this is that same graph earlier. We had that 2017, 2018, 2019, and now we've just added 2020 and 2021. You can see the cost went down. Makes sense because we increased those deductibles and added those max out of pockets so drastically. But we also know that 2020 and 2021 pandemic, right? So a lot of people weren't necessarily going to the doctor if they didn't have to. So that was expected. But at this point in time, with the pandemic, also came retention and recruitment being very important because we had a lot of people leaving the workforce. And now we were coming at a time where we felt like our plan offerings weren't as competitive as they used to be. So that was challenging. So we have really high max out of pockets. Our claims were lower just because of the pandemic, but we didn't really have anything in place to see long-term cost savings. So at that point in time, it was Heather Murray had came and proposed some changes, and we had selected a whole shopping list here of new vendors. So in 2021, we had partnered with benefits consultant M3 Insurance, which they are innovative and on the leading edge, are on the right side of transparency as far as that goes. So that was a good choice at that point in time. We started working with a new third-party administrator in 2022. So we talked about Prairie States. Although we've had some hurdles with them, One of the most important pieces in selecting a third-party administrator is the ability to receive our own claims data so that we can review that and make changes or focus on certain areas where it's needed. That wasn't so much the case with Medica. We were not able to easily access our own claims data with Medica. So that was important in that change. Then we also started working with the near site clinic, Reform Medicine. So I'll talk a little bit more. And we've talked before about the savings that has yielded in the first year. Our transparency tool, which is Aletheus, and a new pharmacy benefit manager in 2022. So any question about the history and what led us to where we are now? Okay. Okay, so you, I believe, have seen this before. I've shared this with you before, but I just kind of wanted to circle back. In working with Reform Medicine as our near site clinic, that the middle green column, the actual 2022 reform costs, that's what we actually spent in 2022 for those services that are listed here. In the gray column, that is a picture of what the services would have otherwise cost had those patients gone to a large provider in the Chippewa Valley, which is Mayo Clinic. So there's some assumptions made here, right, that everyone would have gone to Mayo had there not been a near site clinic, but it's a good comparison of the potential cost savings that Reform had provided in the first year. So just to recap, Reform did provide an estimated $354,000 in the first year.
That's not all of that, so that's just
Correct. So that's a 51% savings, and that's a really well over expected for the first year. Okay, you've seen this as well. So this is our care advocacy and cost transparency tool. That's Aletheus. That's that shopping tool that we talked about at the last meeting. This is just a snip of that sheet that I had provided you all. But in working with Aletheus in the first year, we saved $137,913. And that was actually only at a 47% utilization rate. So there's still a lot of opportunity there. And we had talked about putting together an incentive program to boost that utilization even more. Oh, okay. So the hip replacement example again, the lowest cost in the area, $27,500. The most average cost in the area, $39,500. That's a swing of $12,000. So that's pretty drastic. And it goes up to 80,000 within the Chippewa Valley. So
okay. Now, were they Aletheus able to get costs that were in fact, you know, if I have a common vendor, or were they able to get contract costs? There's a huge difference.
Sure. I think it could be a combination of things. I know that in some cases, employees had been working with Aletheus to get like a preventive screening procedure done, and were given a one-day insurance card to be able to kind of use that network for the one day. So I think there's a lot of things that, you know, are negotiated and maybe even one-time contracts written. And that's a lot of what Aletheus does. They carry all that weight, right? Because there's no way that we could expect employees to be able to do that. And it's not always feasible. You can't, it's really hard to find the cost of certain services with providers. So
yeah, I know that, you know, Walmart, for instance, and my son said the company that his company is working with have gone to, and I don't know who set them up. I have no idea. But what they did is they set up contracts with vendors on some of those more expensive type surgery, hip replacements, knee replacements, back surgery, bypass surgery, things like that. and found that, you know, number one, they went to some of the top, most experienced, you know, places, not, you know, well, this is a new surgical center that opened up, might be the best, but they have no proof. And found that they could contract those services for a very more reasonable price if in fact, you know, that's where they were going to go. And I know with Walmart, it was free. It saved the company enough money that they just said, we'll pay the whole bill if you go there.
Right.
And, you know, and I don't know if that's something, you know, that Alethius has the ability to do. I would hope so.
Sure. I mean, they're more of, I think, free market open strategy with Alethius as far as that goes. I think there is opportunity though to do more direct contracting and things like reference-based pricing. I probably couldn't get too far in the weeds on that.
Yeah.
But definitely strategies that we would be talking with our new consultant about.
Yeah.
To see where the opportunities are.
You know, I realize we're not Walmart Corporation, you know, but at the same time, I mean, they had like 5 or 6 places where you could go for a replacement knee, you know, around the country and things like that. So, I don't know if that's possible, but it obviously was very successful because just like what you're showing there. You know?
Absolutely. Part of that too, part of the process with implementing and working with a new consultant is for them to collect our data for the last couple of years and be able to identify like where our high claims are at and our biggest risk area. And that will help them steer us in, you know, the direction of things like if it's orthopedic surgeries, things like that, if there's opportunities for direct contracts and a lot more cost savings. We've really only scratched the surface of how far we can go. So it's very telling of the opportunities. And then the last piece, of course, that we had implemented in 2022 was a new pharmacy benefit manager. And this was important because ScoutRx is kind of similar to Alethius in that they source and shop for the best possible value. So they're sourcing, you know, even some prescriptions from Canada and seeing a huge savings in that. And in working with them in 2022, it was an estimated $644,425 to the plan. So that's huge. I mean, we know that pharmacy spend is outrageous. So that's been really important. So to kind of add it all up, we have our near site clinic, our care advocacy and pharmacy benefit manager for 2022. That's an estimated $1.1 million that didn't hit the plan. So that's a very successful first year and much more opportunity to do even better for 2023 and beyond. Any questions? Okay. All right. So of course, here's my graph again. But now we have 2022 added as well as a projected amount for 2023 over here on the right. So 2022, the overall claims spend you can see had went down pretty significantly. I also want to note for 2022 was sort of a catch-up year for a lot of people in that you're coming off of 2020 and 2021 where you didn't go to the doctor because of the pandemic, things like that. So 2022 was expected to be a record year and was for a lot of employer health plans. And the fact that we were able to keep it very similar to the year before is impressive. And then we are trending to be about the same for 2023. Of course, that could change at any point in time. So we'll, of course, keep you updated on the success of that. Yes, so the green grew because we implemented things like Reform Medicine. So we have that membership fee that we pay per member. in there, as well as our administrative costs of implementing Aletheus. And then there also is an administrative cost for Scout RX. So we do see the green grow a little bit, but our goal is to reduce the yellow and continue to reduce the yellow. So hopefully once we have 2023 and full review, maybe it won't even reach the projected amount. Okay, and then just to look at this in a sense of per employee per month, you can see in 2020, we were up to $31,385 per employee per year, not month. And we are now in 2022, end of the year at 23,000 per employee per year, and projecting a little bit lower for 2023. But again, that's a guess. So we've done really well. Okay, so here's the part where it's like, okay, why are you telling me all of this, right? I do want to just let everyone know, and I included it in my report, that I did submit a request for a new position for 2024. And the goal in that is to really be able to have somebody that's completely focused on engagement and development in the county. Those things that I had said earlier that often aren't able to be prioritized because of all of the ongoing daily needs of everyone in the office. So looking to sort of reinvest per se, a really small piece of that savings for from the health plan, for example, to be able to keep moving in the direction that we want to be going with retention, continue boosting our efforts on recruitment and also employee engagement and those things. So the idea for this position would be to focus on employee engagement efforts. There's also an opportunity to for this person to be trained to be an on-site facilitator for things like leadership training. We know that leadership training is extremely expensive. A one-day session that we had in the county was, almost $20,000. And we had talked about that at one of the meetings. And we had like 73 managers there. So it was a large group of folks, but you could see where having an on-site facilitator could be really beneficial and not needing to spend those extreme costs. And then also would be looking to this position for developing an actual leadership academy. So putting our new managers, our new leaders through a series of trainings and coordinating all of that. That's not something that we've had at the county. And I know I've reported previously in the last 3 years, we have 62% of our management staff is new. And we know from the data that we were looking at earlier that it's only going to grow. So not only developing and training our current leadership, but also identifying emerging leaders so that we can really, truly succession plan. As well as the ability to provide on-site coaching. So there's actually a process that our EAP provider can provide to our employees to be certified to be coaches. So they can take that role as well. And then some of the ideas here, of course, with being an on-site facilitator, is we could invite other employers in the area that may have similar needs for leadership training and be able to facilitate trainings for their staff as well. So that could potentially be a revenue generating situation or cost sharing. We've had some conversations with other organizations that have similar needs and are open to working together to kind of fill that need together. Any questions?
person potentially be, one of the duties would be in this leadership academy and coaching and that kind of thing? Would that kind of be a blended position? A thought.
I think all things are on the table at this stage of the game. You know, I mean, I think that, yeah, it's the creativity of putting our heads together to say within what we have available, what can we accomplish and how do we accomplish that? Yeah, exactly.
And I also think, at least what I know of your request, is that the assistant county manager is primarily outward facing, in a sense, working on initiatives in the community like broadband and other projects that are pending. And then this would be more inward facing for our staff specifically. And I just want to also add that my goal in this request is just to highlight that the need is there. However, you know, obviously there's a process for prioritization. So I fully understand that. I just felt strongly about really fully being able to put forth engagement and culture initiatives. It would be very important to have somebody that's able to dedicate their time to that.
It appears that we're having a fair number of new position requests coming this year. So not that I see anything other than good out of what your request is. We will probably have many departments requesting those positions. So I guess a strong argument for why yours is as important as the next continues to be important.
The other thing I think that will come into play with any of the position requests will be, are they a position request with a funding source, or are they a position request that comes out of levy? And in this particular case, I think as Jenna and I worked through some of this over the last week, and talking about the options and seeing the cost savings that we're realizing right now, all of that work on the health plan and with our broker and all those things happens on Jenna's watch. Like that's part of what she does. So she can't do these types of things. So without an intended sort of bait and switch, it is a conceivable argument to be made that we utilize some of our savings out of our health plan to fund a position because it's Jenna who's doing it now. Now, I'm just saying, I don't know that that's how it's going to be. I'm just saying that's one potential option, that it doesn't cost additional levy and that it either pays for itself or it doesn't.
And that makes me much easier to accept new positions when they show a return for saving money or generating money.
I just have one thing. I think I understand, but you mentioned something about training people to be coaches. Do we have, at this point in time, designated trainers in our departments? I know that was something that we, during the time I was at Walmart, we ended up doing. They had a program, and then they, how everything else got cut and fell by the wayside, and then it became more and more necessary because of the culture we're in right now with all this hiring. And so they called theirs train to trainer. And so people became professionally trained by HR in, a program that I suppose the company had purchased or just developed to train people, then with the idea that most of those people either were volunteer, but then chosen by, management staff as to who they felt were qualified that could then pass on and become a trainer. And so then when somebody came into that department, it wasn't necessarily the department head's job to, spend all their time training somebody in, now there's only 2 people in the department or they're small. Obviously that becomes an obvious factor, but it became pretty invaluable because that person knew what needed to be taught and, took them through the various phases so that they understood, because that became an extremely important part of retention. Because those people who came in there, got a couple of days of training. Yeah, I understand the basic job. Oh, good. We'll leave you alone. And then they didn't know who to go to when a problem came up. They didn't know who to go to when a health issue came up. They didn't understand, obviously, all the benefit things that were thrown at them in a couple hours at an orientation meeting. But if you have a trainer who's working next to them and they feel pretty good about it, talking to that person, that trainer also needed to understand those things, not necessarily to interpret what but to say, here's who you go to and I'll help you, or I'll call Jenna for you and see if she can talk to you now, or maybe you can leave the department early today and talk to them on the way out. And that became such an important part of retention. We had people just said, I don't know what to do, and left. I got these problems. Nobody seems to be helping with them. And they just left, frustrated and left. And that, I assume is part of what you were talking about. Is that?
Yes. Absolutely looking to this position to be able to develop strategies like that and really keep coordinating that whole movement. And also it's a little bit more difficult in county government to quantify the cost of a vacant position, right? We know that it kind of actually could save dollars by not spending out on wages, but as in terms of the amount of time and overtime and energy spent by department heads, we know that if we can keep even one position, even one employee in a department like the 911 center, that's, very beneficial. It's almost a little bit life-changing for someone like Melissa, who's needing to fill those gaps. So as in terms of ROI, wouldn't be able to immediately measure that with this position. But, you often hear employees, look to leadership as one of the most important pieces of retention and engagement. So this position would be primarily focused on developing our leadership for that effort.
Thank you, Mike.
So this trainer would also train employees, or as the earlier bullet points, employees on how to utilize the insurance and health insurance better. Is that part of it, or did I get them out of order?
Certainly, I think if we were successful in this request, we would evaluate who makes sense to do that training, but it would buy some time, right? If Patty is the one that wants to do training on benefits, right now we try to do our best, but there's just no real time for actual training to take place. So if we were able to offload some of the recognition tasks and things like that for this position to be responsible for, that would open up some space on like Patty's plate to have a more robust process for that, for benefits.
It also was, circling back, it also was one of the key contributors to our looking at another broker. Was we were looking to a broker who would be kind of aligned with our expectations around what they would do with regard to staff education on how to utilize the tools that are available and promotion of those tools.
I just look back at our SAP program, and that was a big difficult thing, but again, that was probably the biggest failure we had as a county, was not hooking up with a vendor that is, was willing and to offer or just discounted it, whatever. The fact that what good is it to us if we don't know how to use it? And boy, we didn't know how to use it.
We lost people on that too.
We did. We lost, I think, a lot of the older experienced retentions that we lost early became because of that. Anyway, thank you for me.
Thank you for all your
Anyone else?
time.
Thanks, Jen. Okay. Next is Criminal Justice Collaboration Division. When we have Sarah here, anybody have anything for Sarah on that division or her report? Mr. Linoff, go ahead.
I just wanted to say kudos to you, Sarah, on getting the additional dollars that seem to be constantly flowing in every report we get. I don't know how you do it, but keep coming. All right.
Okay. Anything else for Sarah? Sarah, you have anything else?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Nothing earth-shattering more news?
No.
Thank you. Okay. Treasurer, anything for the treasurer's office?
Sophia's with us online.
Okay. Any questions for Sophia? Anybody have anything for her? Anything you care to add? Sophia, your report?
There is not at this time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
If I could,
Oh,
I'd
we
just
have
like to
Mr.
thank you.
Bauer.
I'd just like to thank you for volunteering to be the district assistant, chair. So it'd be nice to have somebody local on there.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is IT. And with all the things you're doing, anything else that you want to highlight for us?
Not really, no.
Okay. Any questions for IT? Keep it going, I guess. That's probably the best thing I can say. Thank you. Appreciate it. And then county clerk. We're gonna hear from our county clerk.
I was gonna, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The only thing I'll mention is that at our Wisconsin County Clerks Symposium, AKA County Clerk Camp, that I attended last week. One of the things that was really excellent benefit is that we got to sit down with the Wisconsin Election Commission, including Megan Wolf, who's the administrator of the Wisconsin Election Commission, and talked a lot about the ongoing issues affecting both county and municipal clerks and election officials across the state, which was really, really helpful. They know of the ongoing challenges. And so one of the things that we've been talking a little bit about is some of the increased potential for cyber threats and security leading into 2024. So Dan and I have talked a little bit about that, but it is going to be one of the things that we're going to try to put a little more focus on and see what we can do in the front half as we prep for 2024 here this fall. So that's one of the things. The other thing I'll mention is that we did get a preview of the new absentee ballot envelopes that are being proposed by the Wisconsin Election Commission. They're hoping to have those approved by August 4th. And if so, our printer has already been tipped off on the number that we would like ordered so that we can quickly get those printed and produced, because there's a select number of printers who are able to do this in the state of Wisconsin, and there's 72 counties that need to have absentee ballot envelopes produced. So they're standardizing the absentee ballot envelopes, making it easier for people to hopefully understand how to fill them out. I'll have a preview of what they look like in my July report, but I wanted to give you a heads up on that as well. So some really interesting information is happening as we roll into 2024. The other thing I want you to be aware of, and I'll mention this at the county board meeting next month as well, there is a scuttlebutt about the potential for Wisconsin to be engaged in new electoral maps by 2024. That is something that we were tipped off during county clerk camp about, that there will be a challenge to the current maps that were adopted in 2021. And that will likely be going through the Wisconsin court system and ending up in the Wisconsin Supreme Court. potentially this fall, but potentially as late as February. So there's a chance that they have to get it adopted and changed before people can take out papers to run for state office next year. But that is something that I will be working very closely with our land information officer on to if we do have to get those adopted. So interesting stuff. Any questions?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Oh,
Let's do that.
The question I had is that today I heard about an election and voting rule change by the Supreme Court today. Not exactly sure 100% how that might affect us or not. I'm curious if you have anything.
Sure. There was a ruling by the United States Supreme Court today on election mapping in the state of North Carolina. This comes on the heels of the adoption from the state of Alabama that happened last Friday, basically striking down Alabama's maps and now North Carolina's maps. We're anticipating that this is what will be happening in Wisconsin. If it's going to change, it's a good time for them to change now, so that we have the time to put in place what those maps are going to look like, how they have to be modified, and then if it impacts any current legislators in their wards or districts. So if they're getting written out of their district, how is that going to impact the elections for next year? So that's kind of an ongoing thing. There's going to be more information disseminated about that as we go forward. But yeah, we'll be keeping a close eye on that. And in my July report, I'll have a list of all of the Wisconsin Assembly and Senate bills that are impacting elections that we're currently watching very closely. There are 17 bills right now being proposed from topics ranging all the way from adding additional protection for election workers, clerks, and election inspectors, increasing the penalty for, what's the politically correct way, is attacking those individuals who are working towards our elections. So some of those are really good and interesting for protections for election inspectors and workers. The other ones range from broadcasting the Board of Canvass information. And so it's really a big gamut of information that they're proposing in these bills. We're watching them very closely. We're keeping an eye and I'm actually listening to each of the hearings that they're doing just to see what the discussion is and how that might impact what's going to happen for 2024. It's never dull when it regards elections. Yeah. Vaughn, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. That concludes our reports from the staff that report to this department. Next is item 6 on our agenda, consideration of action to be taken by the committee. And the first is 2023 contingency fund request coming from our sheriff's department to replace a squad car that was totaled in the line of duty, I guess is the way to put it. So anyone care to make a motion on that request at this point so we can discuss it? Mr. Lino.
I will move that we take the approximately $24,000+ from the contingency fund to get a replacement vehicle.
Okay. Second to that. Supervisor Bauer seconds. All right. Any discussion or questions by the committee? This was covering our deductible and what was it here? I can't, it was explained here if I can get down to it. Scrap. Yeah, the value of scrap metal. That's about it.
Yeah, it says the squad was determined to be 18 grand and
there you go. Yeah.
Because like I think, because I remember being on the Judiciary Committee, then him talking about like when they have to replace it, there's like some of those things that they can't reuse and they have to just go with new stuff. And so when there's a new squad, there's always that extra
Extra costs.
extra cost.
Oh yeah, just moving the radio and the computer system and all of that.
We just met
Mr.
yesterday on judiciary and law, just like you were talking about there, and he said most of the stuff did not get damaged. The vehicle's already been stripped down and they plan on using the old stuff if it fits, you know, that they change the inside of the interior or something. If it works out, it'll save money there, but.
So it's basically the request is, I guess I would say up to 24,000 and change here. I don't know, I don't see that. I got all of that information here. 28,50. There we go. 24,000 was on the final page. 28,50. Any other questions or?
I have one. Any chance that any type of restitution we'd ever see a penny of this?
That was also brought up at yesterday's meeting. He says that it'll go through the court system, but your chances of collecting from somebody like that is slim to none, but they'll go through the court system and try it, but.
Okay. All right, anything else? All in favor of granting this request coming out of the contingency fund for the county that we control? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous? Thank you. So those funds are made available to the sheriff's department. Get that squad back online. Okay, review the vouchers is our next item. As usual, of course, everything is itemized and by department. Any concerns about the vouchers?
Some.
Okay.
All right. On basically just wondering when the $1,250 from PFM Asset Management will no longer be drawn on our account.
So we just we moved the first small pot of $500,000 from to our new to the WISC account. And then we also are looking at we have some of those CDs that we did last year that are going to come due here over the late summer and fall. I think one of them actually comes in June. And so Sophia's looking at moving those to WISC then, because they can put them out for bid and get us the best competitive price for those. And so and then we also are looking at moving some highway equipment replacement money and setting that aside in WISC. So we're test driving that kind of that tool and seeing how that works and what before we kind of decide where everything lands.
So not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Hey, Tim, by the way, your mic is not working, even though it's lit up on the thing, your mic is not lit up. So it hasn't been working the whole meeting.
Oh.
That's what I thought might be going on.
Thank you very much. All right. Next item here is under heading of 1250 emergency communication. It just says about halfway down on the page, $514.50, small items of equipment. Talking Point Technologies. Just had a question about that.
I don't know, but I'll find out.
All right. Okay. That one, and then on 1270 under Sheriff Patrol, motor vehicle repair, $1,100. Quick Trip.
That was my question too.
Oh, all right. I'm kind of going, what did they get in the mechanic side of things? I don't know.
Did we get a car? Quick Trip?
I'm assuming fuel.
No, I'm assuming fuel too. I'm just trying to find it on my list here. Oh, Quick Trip, 1111, 1100.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll ask for sure. I'm assuming it's fuel. I imagine it is a matter of someone coded it as motor vehicle repair and it,
Okay,
maybe
I
that's the
was just kind of
closest
wondering,
category, but I'll check.
because I thought we had like Wix or somebody else like that, a different organization where we get our fuel from.
We moved,
Oh, we moved.
yeah.
Oh,
We did.
never
We went-
mind.
We went to Quick Trip. Mhm.
All right. And find it here in a second. Oh, yeah, under 2100 land use grants, septic system replacement, $7,000, one-time vendor reference. And I see 2 entries on it, way to the bottom, almost the last page.
I see that and I will ask.
Cause I didn't know if we needed a septic out in Rock Falls or something else like that from another township area.
Yeah, it wouldn't have fallen under that. My guess is that's probably more something that we pay, that there may be a grant for, and we pay and then are reimbursed. They do a
Okay.
lot of that kind of remediation.
So we're just one hand moves it back
Yeah,
and forth.
but I'll double check for sure.
All right. And then on the last one, I remember we had a conversation a while back about that some of at the Menominee shooting range, Colfax shooting range, Boyceville shooting range, that their clubs would kind of pick up the costs for garbage. And I see we're picking it up.
Yeah, I don't know. What I would say is it may be a matter where we pay it and then they pay us and you wouldn't see that side of it because it's a revenue side. But
And
I'll make sure.
that's what I was wondering, because I kind of thought that the clubs are going to pick this up. That's just what I recall. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Tim. Anyone else? Okay, motion to approve.
Motion.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Rogers and Mr. Zons makes the motion. Any questions? All in favor of the motion, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes. All right. Any considerations for any reports or resolutions to be passed on? We have none. Our next meeting date will be next month.
And apparently June, I wrote instead of July.
That's all right. July 22nd, is that where it falls?
Maybe.
Is that the 4th Thursday? I didn't. We can look here.
Yeah, until 27th.
27th. Okay,
Well, let's see. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, the
Okay.
27th.
so July 27th. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. Any announcements? I have none. There is some information about the upcoming county picnic. So watch
Save a
that.
date for, yep, August 10th.
Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you, committee, for your attendance and all the help from Jenna and Chris. Appreciate it.